Hi, everyone, and welcome to Data Engineers Lunch number 37. Today, we are having one of the software engineers that are not Nikita present on Pipedream, serverless integration and compute platform. So it'll be interesting. The organizers for this event are Rahul Singh, Arpin Patel, and myself. We are always looking for guest speakers, sponsors, and other members. So if you or someone you know would like to speak at this presentation, we do record this and create blog posts. So if that's something you're interested in, it would be good for building your own personal brand as well. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out. We are a part of a larger community, Data Community DC, and we are an inclusive group. So we encourage everyone, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation. Everyone is welcome to these events. You can find out more at datacommunitydc.org/blog, and as well as their events page. What we cover here is everything related to data engineering. So that might be, ETL, streaming, different technologies. If you're interested in being a guest speaker and there's some new technology you want to learn and present on, we are more than open to that idea. At this point, we do like any new members to kind of share their screen and introduce themselves. If you're not feeling shy, we won't force anyone. But if you would like to unmute yourself, share your video, and let us know what you do with data engineering, that'd be great.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Roderick G. I just finished up a data bootcamp course from Georgia Tech. So I'm new to this area, just wanted to find out more about it. I saw this on Meetup and thought this would be a good way to learn more about the industry.
Awesome. Thanks, Roderick. Yeah. Appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Would anyone else like to introduce themselves? All right, I'm going to move. Oh.
I guess I'll go. So my name is as in the display. I've actually met Rahul in person, although it was quite a while back. And I would say I'm interested in basically the higher up, more fundamental parts of the data pipeline. Myself currently being in at the end of a full stack program. Excuse me.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Kevin. Glad to have you here. And if there's no one else, I'll move on. Group rules, if you have a question, please ask it. Be polite and courteous to others. And this is meant to be a discussion, so share what you know. Nikita will lay out his ground rules before he takes over the presentation. Here at Anant, we specialize in Cassandra and deal with real-time big data platforms. Partnered with DataStax as well, some other sponsors. And at this point, does anyone have any jobs, meetups, hackathons, conferences, anything coming up that they'd like to announce?
Hey, everybody. Rahul here with Anant. Just want to remind everybody that Data Week DC is coming up October 6th through the 10th. Looks like we're going to have events that are in person as well as online. So a reminder for our group here, we need to register our meetups that week on the events calendar. It's free, you just put it on there, but it'll be part of a big list of events that are happening that week. And yeah, it's great. If you go to the in-person events, it's a great place to connect with people from all over the industry. It's kind of the first, it's the ones in a year where all of the different meetups in Data Community DC, they get together and they do this. And some of the events, I don't know if they're gonna happen in person, but there's happy hours and stuff that are on there too. So that's it.
Cool. Thanks, Rahul. One announcement we would like to make is we are hiring for full-time or part-time positions at Data Platform Operator, Engineer, and Architect. You can find out more at careers.anant.us. And some of the upcoming events we have scheduled for Data Engineers Lunch. Labor Day, we are not going to be having this event, but the one immediately after that, we're going to be covering Dapper Cloud services. And we will be updating that events page with all of our events in September, so definitely check that out. And with that, I will pass it over to Nikita.
All right, thanks for the intro, Josh. Let me
No problem.
share hopefully the correct screen. That should be it. Okay. All right. 1 second. I don't understand what's going on, but sure. All right. Is it showing the presentation?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so yeah, as Josh said, I'm Nikita, engineer here at Anant, and yeah, today we're going to talk about something called Pipedream, a serverless integration and compute platform. Connect APIs remarkably fast. If you have any questions or comments, then you can either write a message in the chat or just unmute yourself and say something, and we'll go from there. All right, so what is Pipedream? First, I link a couple of URLs in particular to just their main website and then to their documentation, just pipedream.com. So as they state on the website, Pipedream is a production scale serverless platform to connect APIs remarkably fast. You can connect OAuth and OAuth 2.0 and key-based API accounts very easily. You can use those connected accounts in either no code or in Node.js building blocks to do stuff. You can build and run workflows which can be triggered on various events. We'll go over what a workflow is in a second. And when we say triggered on various events, we mean things like HTTP requests to a generated URL by Pipedream. You can have your workflows run on a schedule basis. So like every X minutes or every X hours. On application events, that could be things like whenever a new row is added to a particular Google spreadsheet or Google Sheets spreadsheet, for example, and more. So it's easy to connect APIs with code level control when you need it, but also for less technical people or just to kind of make stuff work really quickly. You don't have, or in a lot of cases, you don't have to write any code whatsoever, which is pretty cool. And then developers with working knowledge of Node.js or JavaScript will get the most out of Pipedream. I believe that's the only languages they have at the moment for their code steps inside of Pipedream's interface. But supposedly Python, TypeScript, and GitHub integrations are coming in the near future. And getting started is really easy. You don't need to attach a credit card or anything. So I guess that's kind of convenient because for some other services, you have to do that. So a brief list of use cases for Pipedream. As they state on their website, Pipedream supports use cases from prototype to production and is trusted by 150,000 plus developers ranging from startups to Fortune 500 companies. They list some of the companies that like developers from those companies use Pipedream or have signed up for Pipedream accounts, including places like GitHub, Airbnb, Riot Games, Atlassian. Pipedream's platform processes billions of events and is priced for use at scale. And some sample applications and uses that people or that developers have used Pipedream for include connecting software as a service applications, general API orchestration and automation. So for automation, it can kind of do a lot of stuff that services like Zapier or Integromat can do. Prototyping and demos, mobile and Gemstack backends, and many more. And they also have a section of their website dedicated to community forums, which you can visit and check out. So now we're going to talk about a couple fundamental keywords that you'll deal with when looking at Pipedream documentation and when you go in and create your own applications and things in Pipedream. So workflows are composed of a set of linear blocks of code, each of which is known as a step. So therefore, a step is a building block that creates a workflow when you put a bunch of them together. Steps include triggers, code blocks, and various pre-built actions where you don't have to code anything at all. All workflows start with a trigger. Trigger is defined as an initial step that regulates how when a workflow gets triggered to run. Triggers can be any of the following. They can either be scheduled, can be an HTTP request to a particular URL, and I believe there are a few others, but those are the two main triggers. Steps are executed in the order that they appear in the workflow. Values can be exported in each step and can then later be accessed via the steps object in future steps. So if you need to preserve some kind of state from one step to another, then one way you can store whatever you want to and have future steps in your workflow be able to access the things that you've stored is through this steps object. And workflow code by default is private, but if you want to share a particular workflow that you've created, then you can set the code to public. But things like execution details and data that gets passed through your workflow and such still remain private. So then a little bit about pricing and sort of how they end up charging you money is they use a term called invocations, where Pipedream counts an invocation every time a workflow or event source is triggered by an incoming event. And in particular, it's important to note that Pipedream increments the count of invocations by 1 for each incoming event, regardless of the number of steps in your workflow. So if I have a workflow that gets triggered by an HTTP request, and then I have like 15 different like little blocks or steps there that do all sorts of different transformations, then invocations, or then that should only count as 1 invocation every time you trigger this workflow to run. And then compute time. Compute time is calculated as the total time your workflow/event source runs, user code and steps. And it's computed in minimum 100 millisecond blocks. So if a process takes 35 milliseconds, then this will count as 100 millisecond compute time. And then a couple of limits on compute time and invocations, depending on whether you're on the free plan or the, or at least one of their lower tiered paid plans. Is for the developer free plan, you get 333 daily invocations and 1.8 million milliseconds of daily compute time, which seems relatively generous for an unpaid option. And then for the basic pro plan for an individual developer, you get 20,000 invocations a month, and then you get charged an extra $0.002 every invocation following that. And if you're on any of the paid plans, then there's no limit on compute time. So here's an example, a screenshot I took a few days ago of my daily invocations and then my daily compute time. We can see that on some days here I have like 100 invocations, a little bit under, and that's because I had a workflow that was triggering every 15 minutes. So like 80 something of those daily invocations was just coming from that. But yeah. And then I'm also going to bring up the open source component of Pipedream. So Pipedream maintains an open source component registry on GitHub. These components let you avoid writing boilerplate code for common API integrations. So if you just need to use you need to connect to a Google Sheet or connect to Google Drive, or you need to quickly connect to like things along the lines of like Slack, Discord, then a lot of members of the community, both like Pipedream developers and just random community members, have probably already created an integration for that particular platform if it's a popular platform. And you can see the code for all of that in the GitHub. And then note that these components can be used as no-code blocks and workflows, or you can take those components and customize them to suit your needs, or if you spot a bug fix, for example. And this is just a screenshot of the GitHub repository showing off a few of the different integrations that exist. Things like AWS, Bitbucket, Datadog. So as I mentioned just a few seconds ago, a brief list of some existing open source components and integrations in Pipedream: Discord bot, Slack, AWS, Google Drive, Sheets, Calendar, Cloud, Docs, HTTP, Reddit, Spotify, and there's something like 400 plus different integrations on the GitHub. And then also on their, as part of the documentation, they have detailed instructions for developing a Pipedream component and how to submit a pull request to try and get your component added to the GitHub and then being directly usable off of their website. So for the demo project today, we'll be going over 2 different workflows created on Pipedream. The first workflow takes like tweets and sends an email to the user's Pipedream account, or rather to the email address that's registered to that user's Pipedream account whenever a new tweet is liked. This workflow uses the following step types. It uses a Twitter API trigger, which is set to run on a schedule, and a send yourself an email step. And so that one will be a very simple workflow. And then the second workflow we're going to look at is a workflow which generates a link, which every time you visit the link in a browser, it will obtain the coordinates, the current coordinates of the International Space Station, and write down those coordinates along with a timestamp into a Google sheet. And then on that URL that you visit, it will return a history of these ISS coordinates and timestamps for when every time that URL was visited to obtain those coordinates. And so some of the steps that are used in the second workflow include an HTTP webhook trigger, a run Node.js code block, and Google Sheets API integration. All right. 1 second. Okay. So the first workflow we're going to look at is saving my liked tweets. I believe if we go to the README tab in the top left here, then we can quite easily see our steps. We see that this is a simple 2-step workflow. And then the order in which steps occur is just a straight line. So it starts at the top, starts at your trigger, and then it goes through all your steps one by one. And so first we have a Twitter trigger, which I think based on how Twitter does API, or based on Twitter's like API call limits, this doesn't just happen like whenever a tweet is like sent out, or whenever like a tweet is clicked on, for example, but it's run on a schedule. So if I go to edit code and configuration for the top step, I can see the code that's going on here. If I want to, I can change it, but I haven't changed this. And then I can see that it's set to run every 30 minutes. You can connect a Twitter account just by clicking connect Twitter. You log into your Twitter and you're good to go, which is very convenient compared to having to deal with like writing the this is like specific code that you need to communicate with the Twitter API. Instead, you can just click on a couple things, write no code, and you have access to Twitter And then what we're doing here is basically this Twitter block is set up so that every 30 minutes, it checks the particular Twitter account that's linked. And if there are any new liked tweets, then it sends them over to the second step in this workflow. And the second step is a email me block. So if I click on a plus here, we see that there's a block type called send yourself an email, which is what this is right here. And then once you have a Twitter account connected and you have like a liked tweet, for example, if that's what you're trying to search for, then you can press send test event and it will show you what the output kind of looks like of that tweet. And then in your future steps, like we can see here, for the text field in the email me step, I'm returning a event.fullText, which if we look up here, we go to entities, or maybe not under entities. Not exactly sure where it is off immediately, but basically if you click through this test event that gets sent in, then you can find how to access a particular value in future steps. And then, for example, if I want to look at this created at value, then I can click copy path. And then instead of event.fullText, I could put in steps.trigger.event.created at. And so then if I save this and then go and like a tweet and wait half an hour until it triggers, then I'll get an email with the following text now, which will just have the created at value. And that's pretty cool. And to do this, I had to write absolutely no code. Only, I guess, code-like stage is figuring out what to put in this text field. But again, you don't even have to like figure that out so much yourself. You just press on copy path to the right of the value that you want to send in the future.
Yeah, and by the way, it looks like the path is always going to be in either event, steps, or process. Like everything is nested. Like if you go back to the text where you put in that, where you were about to copy the path, yeah, scroll down, yeah, like where you have the steps.trigger, yeah. So like, go ahead and clear that out for a second, just completely, right? You see like search object explorer, yeah, so there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everything is gonna be, I think, under those three general categories.
I think steps was the step. Okay. There is also a way to one thing that this workflow doesn't do, which you can do, is there's an object called checkpoint. And basically what this object lets you do is, let's say that you want to keep track of how many times your workflow is run. And then every 10th time a workflow has been run, then you want to do something different. And so if you use this checkpoint object, you can store stuff into it. And then every time that the workflow is run again, it has access to that updated checkpoint object. But we don't do that here because we don't really need to. And so this is a really simple example, just 2 steps. Yeah, don't want to save anything. And now we're going to go over this International Space Station example, where we see we have more than a couple of steps. So in this example, we start off with an HTTP trigger. And so basically, if you have an HTTP trigger, or if you create one on Pipedream by just pressing the little plus, and then there's an HTTP trigger thing that'll show up, then it will generate a URL for you. And so if I visit this URL, assuming that was turned on, is something not working? Okay, well, we're gonna assume that Oh, there we go. Okay, that took a little bit of time, but we can see that I've just now asked for the International Space Station's current coordinates, which we pull from just some website that does this for us. And then we save those coordinates. First, I'm going to go through the workflow, and then I'll show off the Google Sheet or the Google Sheet that stores all this information. But if I go to this link again, so if I just do a quick refresh, we can see that I've just asked for the latitude, longitude of the ISS again, but we're also sent a full history of every time that we visited this URL. So if I do it again, there'll be another one, so on and so forth. So this workflow, it first starts off with this HTTP trigger. Then the first step that occurs afterwards is a little Node.js code step, where basically we look to see if steps.trigger.event.url.ends with favicon.ico. So what this step does is, in some browsers, your browser might, when you visit a particular page, it'll go to the page, but then it'll also go to /favicon.ico on that page. And so if you don't have a filter like this for when you're for an HTTP trigger, then depending on your browser, every time you visit a page, it might do 2 entries instead of 1. And we don't particularly want that, so we just filter out that request. We say that if the URL ends with this or has this ending, then we just end the workflow, and the rest of the steps won't get executed. Next, we have another Node.js code block, where this time we're doing a quick little HTTP GET method to this particular URL, which if you send it a GET request, then it will give you the current location of the International Space Station. And at the end of every step, if you want to export a value from that step, then you can simply return it. So we see that this step is named steps.getISSPosition, and we see that we return response.data, which is the latitude, longitude of ISS that's being returned by this URL. And so if we look in future steps, at this next one right here, which is another Node.js code block step, which what it does is it takes, so again, this prior step where we get the actual ISS position is called steps.getISSPosition. And if we look in this following step, we see that we're using steps.getISSPosition.returnValue.timestamp, which is the thing that we returned from this step. And then we do some stuff with it. Let's undo that. In this particular case, we're just taking the timestamp value that we get, and we're formatting into a year, month, day thing. So we can then later use this to neatly insert the data into a Google Sheet. And then once again, since we want to be able to use this in a future step, where we're going to take this formatted timestamp and insert it into our Google Sheet, then we simply return it. Then in the following step, we have a Google Sheet API integration, which did not require any sort of coding. And basically you add a Google account or a Google Sheets account, and then you can browse through your Google Drive, find your particular spreadsheet, and then you can set up what sort of data gets inserted into that spreadsheet. Here we set up 4 different columns. We can see that the step before it, where we took our timestamp object and we converted it to a nice formatted one that'll show year, month, and date. For our 4th column, we are inserting steps.format datetime.return value, which was the return value of the step called steps.format datetime. And so if we look at our Google Sheet, this is acting strangely. It should be formatted. I'm not exactly sure why it's not formatting properly. Must be something wrong with this stage then. But we're gonna assume that this is working as intended. And then afterwards, if we notice, so far we've gotten the location of the ISS, we've formatted the date time, or attempted to format the date time into a convenient format where we show year, month, and date. And then we have a step for adding a row in our Google Sheet. However, when I visit this URL, we see that we're actually obtaining all of the data that's in that Google Sheet. All right, so we have 0 through 5. If we go back to the Google Sheet, we can see that we have 6 rows. And so in the following step, after we've added our row to our Google Sheet spreadsheet, we have another Google Sheet API integration, but this time we're writing code to do something with it. And based on the Google Sheets API, we access a particular URL, which is related, or rather, we access a particular URL, inputting our Google Sheet unique identifier at some point. And we're basically asking for the entire spreadsheet, which is done with the end here after /values. Right there. Yeah. So we're just asking for the entire spreadsheet, and the specific values that are written here, or rather how this is done, is based on the Google Sheets API, which you can find on somewhere on Google's website. And so we write to a Google Sheet, we write a new row, then we pull the entire sheet. And then after we pull the entire sheet, we do a little bit of a transformation to make things look a little bit neater. And then we end with another Node.js code block step where we respond, or we send a response once a user then goes to this URL that we've had generated before for us. And we return the values that we formatted in the prior step called steps.transform. So we have steps.transform.return value. And that's sort of what's going on here. And then if I take, as I mentioned before, all of this data is being pulled from the Google spreadsheet. So if I take the spreadsheet and I delete like most of the rows, and then I visit my one generated URL from before, we see that now we only have 2 rows because I left 1. Oh, and also we can see here that the date time is properly showing now. I didn't change any code steps. It just wasn't working before.
Gautam was saying that it's possible that your the format inside Google Spreadsheets itself could have been a number, and then it was changed to a date. Because you can condition, you can change the formatting of a particular cell or a particular column in Google Spreadsheets. So if you go back to your Google Spreadsheet, just click, yeah, see, so click on column D, the top, and then go change, you see the little 1, 2, 3 above in the menu? Yeah, change that to like date or date time. Yeah.
Right, I understand that, but
yeah, go ahead and refresh it. No, go back and, well, you reverted back to formatting. So yeah, that date time. Yeah. Now go refresh your API. You see, you could format the data in your code, but if your Google
that is what's going on though, is the thing. There is a data formatting step.
You mean inside your code, you're setting the cell data format rather than the value? It seemed to me that you were setting just the value.
So right here in the steps.format date time, we're using this package, this npm package called Luxon, and we're taking the timestamp value, which is just the large number we were seeing before, and converting it to the following date format. And then it should just insert it like this.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. Google Spreadsheets overrides what you set it.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it doesn't detect it.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not that smart. I mean, that maybe Microsoft Excel, because it's been around 20 years before spreadsheets, but not Google Spreadsheet. It's not that cool. Not yet.
But it somehow did start working after I just refreshed the page. So okay, it's fine. But yeah, and then my apologies to Josh for not seeing this question earlier. But Josh asked, did you use the no code or code option to create these? For the most part, every step here that isn't a Node.js code step is done with just no code, which is pretty cool. And there are like 400, 500 plus different steps that exist that you can use very quickly without any sort of coding and get stuff up and running. So I think that like, at least maybe on a smaller scale, you could quite easily replace some kind of like automations platforms, maybe like basic functionality of like Integromat or Zapier or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I also saw they integrate with Axios, the package. I assume you didn't do that. That part of built-in.
No, so you can use any npm package that you want. You just have to require it at the beginning of a Node.js code block step. You don't need to write a package JSON. Just any npm package should be straight up usable. And so in some of these code block steps, we use the package Axios to do HTTP requests.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But you can use any. Is only JavaScript used or any other language like Python? Yeah, at the moment it's only JavaScript and Node.js. But they claim that they're gonna have, or that they're gonna add support for Python and a couple other or at least one other language in the future.
Yeah, I think it's like this is I've seen several tools in kind of the low code market, and I think this is somewhere between Zapier, Integromat, like you were saying, and there are some kind of headless CMSs where you can do a bit of scripting in JavaScript, but like not this much. Like this is actual Node code. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to see what they're limiting, because like when you say call this API, like they're not restricting you from calling any API, right? You can do whatever you want in this code. Yeah. It's basically, it's like a wrapper to, I'm betting this is on like Lambda, AWS Lambda, and it just takes your code that you configure, saves it as a Node.js Lambda function, and just like pumps it out. Yeah, I mean, like you could probably do a trace route on the IP addresses and figure out which hosting company is running it. I bet you it's AWS Lambda.
Well, AWS runs borderline everything. Yeah.
No, it doesn't run everything. That's what people think.
Right, Kevin asks, are there performance issues to choosing not to use the newer fetch for these requests? I don't have an answer to that question. Sorry about that. And last thing we'll end with is just a small list of resources, mostly just links to their website. In particular, the documentation is pretty good. Also, the quick start guide. There's like a super quick start guide, and then there's like a less quick start guide, which takes, an hour, 2 hours to go through. And both of those are really useful in sort of understanding the basics of how to pass data in between steps, how to create steps in general, and how to modify steps or modify the code if you choose to do so. All right. I think that'll be it for me.
Thanks, Nikita.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Very sweet.
Yep.
I wonder.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I wonder, Nikita, if this is cheaper than us paying Vercel to run some of our APIs, because it costs so much money for running our serverless functions. Like, what is it, like 20,000 for free, or 20,000 for $20, right?
20,000 for $19, and then 0.0002 of a dollar per additional.
Nice.
Which is 20 cents per thousand, or $2 per 10,000.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, I see. What I was going to say is I see, Raul, you've mentioned in the past, these no-code options becoming more and more available for people. This seems like a step in that direction for like the API calls side of things, rather than just like front-end appearance of things. But this is actually making API calls without requiring someone to write the code. And I see this getting more and more popular with time.
Yeah, I mean, there's always two schools of thought, or two different mindsets about automation and new technology. Some people are like, sweet, this is great. And some people are like, this is going to take my job away. And that's never the case. Like my dad used to program with punch cards. Nobody likes to program with punch cards, right? That was the way you used to program. Now you have to think at a higher level, like, like Kevin was saying, right? You're going to be a smarter person solving bigger problems than typing out. In this case, you're still writing code, but it's like you're not writing the operational code. You're not creating cron jobs, and you're not making. In this case, you don't even have to make the queue. I bet you there's a queue in the back end that is keeping track of all of the events, and and it subscribes it for you and all that stuff. And yeah, this isn't easy. Like, to run production systems, it's not an easy job. Like, if you're a programmer just getting started out, you'd be like, oh, I want to do everything. Like, no, you don't. you have other shit to do, man.
No, yeah, that's one of the largest advertisements of something like this, is that you don't have to write boilerplate code for interacting with APIs. Basically, someone else has just written it for you.
Yeah.
And then you can use it in their workflows.
Yep. Cool stuff, man. Yeah. Yep. Thanks for showing this off.
Yep. All right. Well, with no other questions, I think we're done for today.
All right. Thanks, Nikita, and thanks everyone for attending. We appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Thank you.